Get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's event dedicated to the topic of exploring transferring from a community college to a university. My name is Tom Egan, Director of Strategic Partnerships with Youth Solutions, a statewide nonprofit inspiring and connecting youth to achieve a future beyond imagination. We are thrilled to have the University of Michigan here with us today, including a panel of students who started off at a community college before transferring to the University of Michigan. I would like to point out that today's event is being recorded and specialists are broadcasting today's discussion to their youth in classrooms. Please use the chat feature to ask any questions you have throughout the session, and feel free to unmute yourself at the end during our Q&A and also ask questions personally. In the last few minutes of today's event, we will be holding a prize drawing for two $25 Amazon gift cards. If you are a youth and wish to participate, please take this time to enter your name into the chat box below. And for specialists, if you have students in your classroom, please enter the name of those who wish to participate, especially if you're broadcasting to a group. At the end of the event, we will randomly select two names to receive the cards. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Hartman, Assistant Director of Transfer Initiatives and Partnerships with the University of Michigan. Michael, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Tom. Good morning, everybody. As Tom said, I'm Michael Hartman, Assistant Director of LSA Student Recruitment for Transfer Initiatives and Partnerships in the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts at the University of Michigan. So I will be hosting / moderating our panel today. And with me today are three of our transfer student ambassadors who work for us, all of who, as Tom said, started at one of the Michigan community colleges and just as within the last year or so transferred to LSA. And so they are here to offer their expertise on what it takes and to answer your questions about what that path might look like of starting at a community college in the state and coming to the University of Michigan. So I'll start it off by just asking the panelists to introduce themselves. And you all three have done this multiple times. So you sort of know what we're asking you to say in your introduction. So I'll just throw it open to whoever wants to start.
I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela, or Kayla Owens. I am a junior going into my senior year here at the University of Michigan. I'm currently majoring in film with a minor in history, and I transferred from Henry Ford College, which is in Dearborn, and I hope to graduate next spring. So, yep.
Go ahead, Dallas.
Hello. My name is Dallas McGee Henry. I'm a senior here at the University of Michigan, graduating in December, one more semester. Woo! I'm also a film major and I transferred from Oakland Community College.
And my name is Jacob Foster. I am a psychology and anthropology double major on the pre-med track. And I transferred from Grand Rapids Community College. I'm a rising senior, but I have a third year from my transfer. So I'll be here for a while. I'm going to really integrate into U of M.
All right, thanks. So can you just start off by talking a little bit about your path and why you decided to start at a community college and what you did to prepare while you were at the community college to transfer to LSA?
Yeah, so I can start. So this is going to University of Michigan was actually my second time transferring. My freshman year, I was in a school in Chicago and then transferred home after finding a program that was offered at Henry Ford College that would help transition to the University of Michigan. A lot of it I have to base off of my sister. She's also a current transfer student. So I looked to her in terms of advice of finding a place that would kind of suit my needs, both academically and socially. And I found that with the University of Michigan. When I was at Henry Ford, I talked to Nick Turinsky, who is also one of my bosses too. And he was the one that kind of helped me figure out what is it that I need to take in terms of classes that would help transfer certain credits here, just to make up for my time in order to kind of be integrated well at the university. So yeah, I did a lot of that. I participated in programs that he offered through the Transfer Bridges to Humanities program, a lot that was getting settled with certain people in terms of helping me with my application, essays, and then next steps after application. So, yep.
My experience was pretty different, I think. I'm a non-traditional student, so I'm 25 years old. I was actually in a relatively established finance career before I even decided to go to community college. So community college was a good stepping stone for me. And I went to Grand Rapids Community College. And so I was actually considering Grand Valley State University for almost the entire time. That's generally the path that people from West Michigan will take. Grand Valley is the cheaper option from a simplistic point of view. What a lot of community college students don't realize is University of Michigan is actually a cheaper option because they have a significantly larger pool of financial aid. But that is a whole nother conversation. And I actually wouldn't have gone to the University of Michigan if I did not randomly run into Nick Turinsky in our advising office one day. They had a booth set up and he explained to me what the process looks like. I never actually even considered myself like a student that would be worthy of the University of Michigan. I wasn't really like a high academic performer before I went back to community college. So it was very interesting. I actually decided that I was going to go to Michigan like the October before the application was due. So I did my entire application into the University of Michigan and prepared for the University of Michigan over a period of like 5 months. Nick was a huge help in that.
My story's all over the place, but I'll streamline a lot of my thoughts. I'll take it back to like high school. I knew I wanted a film degree, but didn't know how I wanted to get my film degree. But I also knew that I could not afford college. So I started off at a community college, and through my school, because I went to a Detroit public school, we had it was a foundation that provided free community college for students who graduate. So I'm like, you know what? Why not? It's free. Let me do it. And one of the best decisions of my life. Went to OCC, did pretty well, and upcoming on my senior year there, um, I didn't know again where I wanted to go. I always found myself in this loop, like, all right, what's next? And it's like, I have all these options. I'm a good student. And one of my counselors and advisors, they told me to look into Michigan. And after looking into Michigan and looking at some of their financial resources, because once again, I didn't have any money. I thought that this would be a good fit for me. And after talking to also Nick Turinsky, he gave me like this like to-do list of things that I have to do to transfer into the university, which is super helpful because I was super lost on a lot of things that I had to do. And funny story, the first time I applied, I got denied because of high school transcripts I didn't have. But I kind of got not in my head too much, but I'm like, you're not going to deny me. So I applied again and I got in the following semester. So so far, LSA has been a good fit for me. I love the school so far.
All righty. So if anybody else have questions from the audience, feel free to post them. But we can move on with our prepared questions. So can you all talk a little bit about what the transition is like coming from a community college into a large research university? And I know all three of you have come in the last year and a half. And so Dallas spent 2 months before campus shut down for COVID, and Kayla and Jake, you've been here COVID the whole time, right? So, but can you talk a little bit about what that transition's like, and also the academic transition into coursework at a large research university?
Yeah, so for me personally, I don't know if I really I don't know if I really caught on to the transition until I was much into it, if that kind of makes sense. I think for me, it was just kind of like, all right, we're just gonna get right in there and we'll just kind of go head first. I will say, I mean, obviously going from a community college to the, University of Michigan, it does change academically, but I think, and I remember talking to a couple students about this too, who are also curious. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to it's not necessarily, is it harder or is it, more tough on you? I just think there's a lot more added onto it. I think the assignments kind of come in with, there's a lot more depth, which, in looking at the first 2 years of my college experience, which a lot were prereq classes, there we go, that a lot were just like kind of scraping off just like bit by bit, especially like in terms of looking at my interest. And then you have something more of like the classes that I'm taking now that kind of like, all right, you already understand the foundation, so we're going to get you into more of like, how is this going to help you post career or thinking about it from a different perspective? I think that's where the difference lies for me. And just kind of looking at it maybe in a more, like at a different angle that is a little bit more, I don't really know the good word for it, but that's what I would say is different in terms of academically. I think the transition though, personally for me, I would hope that many people going into college, especially as a young person, it is a time that you try to find yourself. Those were the first 2 years what I kind of struggled with the most, is figuring out, okay, what do I do? I'm going to be 22 by the time that I graduate. I don't even know what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I think coming here though, and having such a broad, expansive college like LSA that allows you to kind of figure that out and have those open opportunities without just be limited to like one sector or spectrum of likes and dislikes, I think that has really helped me in terms of making the transition of going from a confused 18-year-old to a more mature 21, 22-year-old, and is going to be ready for whatever the world kind of brings me. So yeah.
Say for me, the transition was relatively easy. I think that if you're a community college student and you make it into the University of Michigan, you're disciplined and like you're ready for it. You're excited. Obviously, there are bumps, but to be honest, I don't really think about the bumps all that much because I was excited to be here, and I was excited for research experience, to be involved in a higher ed environment. So I was really just excited to be able to do some of the larger university things like research and grad school exploration that maybe wasn't available at community college. And I would say that was the biggest part of my transition, is getting involved in things that were greater than myself. And those opportunities existed in a community college environment, thankfully, at Grand Rapids Community College, just not with the same scope and range.
I don't want to bring the energy down, but my transition sucked in the beginning. It was hard when I got to the university. I'm not gonna lie at all. Coming from a community college where a lot of your classes was in one building, or even I had another campus where it was spread out into like 7 buildings, but they were all in like the same like strip. So I was like, okay, I'll just have to go to A building, which is like 1 minute of a walk. And then stepping foot into Ann Arbor, I'm like, well, not in Kansas anymore. This is different. But I want to say like even like mentally like it was like this isolation factor because when I graduated from Oakland Community College, I graduated like a good friend group, and a lot of them went to the same school, but no one came to the school I went to. I didn't know that many people. And then just stepping into some of these classes, and I have this thing where I have to sit in the front of the classroom because if I sit in the back, someone's head's going to distract me. So I sat in the front of a lecture hall, and in my mind, not all of these seats, it was like 125 seats in the class. Not every seat was going to be filled, but just midway through the class, I like turned around and it's like a packed class. I've never been in a class this big before. usually it's like 30 kids in the class when I was at OCC. So it was like a little intimidating, and then just feeling like I didn't belong at a point in time. Like, these students are pretty much smarter than I am. They just had so much more knowledge and just much, they like just wanted to speak up. And I don't know, it was a lot to handle within like the first month, but things did get easier as soon as I just kept on reassuring to myself that I belong to be at the university. The academics, I don't want to say got easier. Well, they did kind of get easier. The workload was still a lot. The workload compared to community college is definitely still a lot though. But then like 2 months into the transition, to make things even harder, I transitioned to online. So it was a lot my first semester, but things are getting relatively easier.
You know, Dallas talks about not feeling like he's smart enough, but I've had a number of conversations with Dallas, and he's one of the smartest guys I've met. So here at U of M, so it's funny what stigma can do to you.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Jacob.
So, and actually, somebody asked about if you felt any stigma associated with starting off at a community college and versus starting at a four-year school. And if so, what would you tell high school students who are thinking about, starting at a community college as they're beginning their higher ed career? What would you sort of tell them about that?
For me personally, it's almost as if I wish I had started off in a community college. I know my dad, he did the same thing. He went to community college for 2 years before he transferred over to Central. And of course, that was a different time. That was the 80s. But I think for me, in high school, I was like, knew what I want to do. I think it was the same way as Dallas. I was like, yeah, film sounds great. And then I got to my freshman year and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I was surrounded by people who had been doing film clubs in high school, and I came from a very small charter school. And so I think a lot of that stress of just kind of what Dallas felt, but again, this was taking back to my freshman year of just, I'm surrounded by people who know much more than I do, and how am I going to be able to compete? And I think if I had taken the time to just allow myself that room to breathe and be like, okay, I'm going to take everything with a grain of salt. I'm going to be in a space that is not, as much as I do love the experience that I got my freshman year, it was very limited. It was an art school. So you had no math and science. And if it was math and science, it had to draw back into the arts some way, somehow. And I think a lot of that was too much for me, as coming from somebody who had that breadth of everything for 4 years in high school. So I think allowing you to have that room at a community college and figure out what you want, I think that might be helpful for more students. And then instead of just going in and be like, this is my decision and I'm going to stick with it for 4 years, because I don't know, I've yet to read up on the stats, but I feel like it's such a big thing for students that, they go from one major to the next, and that is such a normal part of their college career. And yet nobody wants to really talk about that. So, because I've considered switching my major multiple times. So it's just like allowing that just platform. But I also think too, community colleges can help with that transition, that it's like, okay, if you figure that out, we can provide you the next steps. And I think having that program that both, Dallas and Jake and I had, that is like, you can, your potential can be used at somewhere like the University of Michigan, which for all of us, we were like, oh my God, that's such a big like institution. Knowing that we can belong here, I mean, from where we start out, I think community colleges should have that push to, you figured out what you want to do. Okay, now we're going to work you to get to the next step, because we know that you have potential, and let's put it to an even greater use than what you're already using it for already. So that's my spiel.
Dallas, Jake, you want to touch on that, or?
Sure. I think I'm going to integrate my answer into Tom's question too, though, because I think they're kind of the same. Yeah, I think the stigma is like a personal stigma. I don't think that any of the students here that are four-year students really care that we're transfer students, to be completely honest. And that's the biggest thing. That is a piece of advice that I would give, is that no one really cares, and anyone that does care isn't really worth knowing. Um, Individuals who treat you differently because you're a transfer student, or any other identifying factor of yourself that you can't really help, um, isn't really worth spending your time on. And so that's the biggest piece of advice that I'd give to people. I think a lot of people who are in this situation, whether you're traditional, non-traditional, four-year community college, feel that they need to be in one space or another, and you don't. um, so so that's the biggest piece.
Um, I feel like there was definitely a stigma, but I feel like most of the pressure was put on by myself. Um, uh, from my graduating high school class, I think only three of us went to a community college, and the rest went to universities. And at a point in time, I'm like, did I make the wrong choice? Or why did everyone just think it was a smarter decision to go to a university after high school? And I'm like, it's free. They're giving it to us. Like I thought free education was a cool thing, so I took up on that deal. And I don't know, just watching people just do these cool things on like social media, like I'm at my school doing this, I'm studying abroad, I'm doing this, and I'm at a community college. I'm like, well, I guess, but whatever. Then even when I finally got to the University of Michigan, watching some people who I graduated with already graduate from a four-year, I don't know, I think I'm just comparing myself too much to what other people were doing. Like maybe I should have went to a university, but I feel like that thought, it really disappeared. I think it finally disappeared somewhere around like last year, just when I was in the house just thinking, because there was nothing else to do. Because I don't have a single piece of college debt, and I always commend myself for that. Um, it, the University of Michigan seemed very open and welcoming to transfer students. Um, and that made me feel pretty well. And it's like one of the biggest pieces of advice I'll give to a transfer student is a lot of the things that you're feeling and thinking, they're completely valid, and someone else has felt these things and thought these things. But you can do what the other students are doing just as much as they're doing it. I know that was terrible wording, but if someone else can do something, you can do it too. Just you have to think you can do it and put forth the work to do it. And I just see myself go above some of the people who I've seen at the university, or just eye level with them once I started to actually like believe in myself.
All right, great. So we are almost out of time. So just real quick before getting to the last question, because when Jake said something about financial aid and all that. So the University of Michigan has the, if people are not aware, the Go Blue Guarantee, which is for in-state residents whose family income is below $65,000 with assets below $50,000, that you get a guaranteed full tuition scholarship if you're admitted. And then in addition to that, those students typically get additional financial aid to pay for housing, room and board, things like that. And so the net cost for students with need at the University of Michigan is much lower than any of the other four-year schools in the state. So that's what Jake was referring to. So now to sort of end up in the next couple of minutes, Jake, you already gave your big piece of advice, but Dallas and Michaela, can you just sort of give the one piece of advice that you would give students who are thinking about starting at a community college and transferring, or just being a transfer student in general?
I think for me, I will say that I'm trying to remember. I told this to one of my students that I was working with, and I totally forgot it. I think for me, though, it's just this essence, and I think both Jake and Dallas, especially you, touched on it, is that you are worth it. These are your hopes and dreams, and there's nothing wrong with having that. And you have to find the place that makes you feel comfortable. Because I know, again, Jake and Dallas, you guys touch on this in terms of like, there's a certain stigma around the word transfer and what does that mean? And I think if you're not happy, or if you want to find some place that you know is going to make you happy, or that is going to help you even more academically or socially rise, you have that choice now. I mean, you're going into college, you have more of that adult mindset now, so you are willing to make those choices and you go forth with that. I will support that decision. I think somebody in the chat touched on this too. It is one of the best decisions I've ever made. It really is. I mean, I can't imagine my life without going to Michigan and what this is going to bring me going forward. But you know, you need to find that place that makes you comfortable, whether it is the University of Michigan or it's someplace else. I will say, as somebody who goes here, I love it and I will always love it, but you have to find that place for you. So if you want to work as being a transfer student, you find the people who are going to support you, and we will do nothing but give you guidance and aid to whatever it is that you need. So I think just doing that research and finding that and making that dream become more of a reality, you know, that would be my biggest advice, I think, if that makes sense.
So Dallas, I don't mean to interrupt. Tom, do we need to end it? Everything you said, Dallas, was amazing. So you don't need to do final comments.
Yeah, if you just want one headline, Dallas, go for it. If you got something to say, now's your time.
I would just say, don't rush the process, don't force the process, just find the best way to go through the process.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much to the University of Michigan. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for bringing such great students together. Kayla, Jacob, Dallas, we really appreciate the rich content, especially coming from you and your life experience. Very valuable. And just a reminder to join us next week, Thursday, May 13th, so same day, but from 11 to 11:30 to hear powerful stories from 3 professionals who started off at a community college. So this week students, next week professionals, Thursday, May 13th, 11 to 11:30. Thanks everyone, and see you next time. Thank you.